Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. The first thing I saw when I walked into our kitchen wasn't the usual mess of coffee cups and unopened mail. It was a crumpled piece of paper on the counter with 5 words scribbled in Delilah's handwriting. "Don't wait up tonight. Okay?" Next to it sat my mother's favorite china teacup, the one she only uses when she's been over for a long talk. My gut twisted before I even touched the note. The air felt wrong, like the room itself was holding its breath. And then I spotted it, her phone charger still plugged in, phone missing. That never happened. She always took it everywhere like it was an extra limb. Before I could spiral too far, my own phone buzzed with a message from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Just one line: "Man, I think you need to know where she is." I tapped the link he sent without thinking and froze. A tagged post on social media. Delilah, at a dimly lit bar, sitting far too close to a man in a tailored suit, laughing like they shared a private joke. And then came the kicker. My own mother's comment under the photo, a cheerful, "Make the most of it, sweetheart. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." I stood there gripping the counter, trying to convince myself I was misreading everything. But then the post updated, a short video clip this time. I watched Delilah lean in, whisper something in his ear, and he kissed her neck while she didn't just allow it. She smiled. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick right there. And in that moment, between the buzzing in my ears and the burning in my chest, I realized something. Whatever game she thought she was playing, I could play too. I didn't smash anything. I didn't call her. I didn't even text. I just poured myself a glass of water, sat down at the table, and started writing out exactly what I was going to do before she came back through that door. She thought one fling before the wedding was no big deal. She was about to find out how big of a deal it could become. By the time night settled over the neighborhood, the rain had stopped and the street outside glistened under the dim glow of the lampposts. I was still at the kitchen table, nursing the same glass of water, staring at that crumpled note like it might suddenly rewrite itself and tell me this was all some misunderstanding. But it didn't. The silence in the house was deafening. Normally, at this hour, Delilah would be humming off-key in the shower, or pestering me to watch a show I had no interest in. Tonight, the only sound was the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall, each second feeling heavier than the last. I tried convincing myself she might really be out running harmless errands, picking up decorations for the wedding, maybe grabbing coffee with a friend. But every time I pictured that man from the video leaning in toward her, the image of his hand on her neck, her eyes closed in a smile that wasn't meant for me, my chest tightened. The part that gnawed at me most wasn't just the idea of her with someone else. It was that my mother's name was tangled up in it, practically giving her a blessing to go through with it. My phone lit up again, this time with a text from the same friend who'd sent the first link. "She's not hiding it, Harris. You need to decide what you're going to do before she gets home." That line stuck with me. Decide. As if this was a crossroads where one path led to swallowing my pride and the other, somewhere else entirely. I got up, pacing the narrow strip between the counter and the fridge, my mind running through options. If I confronted her tonight, she'd spin it. She'd call me insecure, say I misunderstood, maybe even throw my mother's so-called advice back in my face. And the thought of standing there while she denied what was right in front of me, I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed a notebook from the drawer and started writing. Names, dates, little details that might seem insignificant now but could matter later. The time she left, what she was wearing, even the color of the man's tie from that video. It felt ridiculous at first, but it gave me something to cling to, a way to turn all this helplessness into something solid. Around midnight, I checked her location through the app we'd installed months ago when she worried about my safety during late-night shifts. Her dot hovered over a boutique hotel just across town. My stomach twisted, but I kept staring at it, watching it flicker in and out as if even my phone didn't want to confirm what I already knew. I closed the app, shut off the lights, and went upstairs without touching the bed. I knew I wouldn't sleep anyway. Whatever she thought she was doing, whatever she thought I didn't know, the truth was already in motion. And so was I. When my phone buzzed again hours later, long before dawn, I glanced at the screen. 17 missed calls. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted the number to climb, because the higher it got, the more I'd know my plan was working. By sunrise, my phone looked like it had been caught in a storm. Missed calls stacked one after another, the number pushing past 30. Then came the text messages, each one more frantic than the last. At first, they were casual. "Hey, are you awake? I'm on my way home, we need to talk." But as the hours passed without a response, her tone shifted. "Harris, this isn't funny. Pick up the phone right now. If you don't answer, I'll come find you." The irony wasn't lost on me. After spending the night wherever she'd been, she was suddenly desperate to know where I was. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching the early commuters roll past, my phone face down on the side table. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Not yet. Silence, I realized, could be louder than shouting. It leaves room for imagination, and in her head, I wanted the walls closing in. Around 9, I finally saw her car pull into the driveway. She didn't park like she normally did. She swung it in too fast, tires crunching against the edge of the curb. Through the blinds, I watched her get out. She looked disheveled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. Her makeup smeared in a way that didn't come from a long night's sleep. She clutched her phone like it was a lifeline, scanning the front windows as if she expected me to be standing there with answers. I didn't move. Instead, I slipped quietly into the kitchen, opened the back door, and stepped outside into the cool morning air. I circled around to the side of the house and listened as she came inside, calling my name in that forced calm voice people use when they're trying to sound in control. The sound of her heels clicked against the hardwood, then stopped. Silence. I imagined her scanning the living room, seeing my phone charger still plugged in, the bed untouched upstairs, no coffee brewing. Nothing that said I'd been there at all. Then came the voice, softer this time, almost trembling. "Harris, can we just talk?" I stayed outside, leaning against the siding, heart pounding but my resolve hardening. She needed to feel what I'd felt last night, that gnawing uncertainty, the creeping realization that something had shifted and couldn't be put back. After a few minutes, she gave up calling my name and I heard her pacing instead, the floorboards creaking in uneven bursts. I imagined her glancing at the clock, at her phone, at the door, wondering if I was with someone else, if I'd left for good, or if I was simply sitting somewhere, letting her stew in it. What she didn't know was that I had already put the first step of my plan into motion. While she was out, I'd moved a few important things, not enough for her to notice immediately, but enough to make her second-guess her memory when she did. My suit for the wedding? Gone. A couple of framed photos from our trips? Missing. Even the spare key she kept in the drawer by the sink? Gone. This wasn't about making her angry. It was about pulling the rug slowly, piece by piece, until she didn't know where the ground even was anymore. And by the time she realized what I'd done, it would already be too late. By midday, the house had turned into a pressure cooker. I'd been watching from my car, parked half a block away under the shade of an old oak, just out of view. From that distance, I could still see enough through the living room window to know she was unraveling. Delilah kept moving from room to room, sometimes stopping in the doorway as if she'd just realized something was missing. Every so often, she'd grab her phone, type furiously, then toss it onto the couch like the screen had burned her. My own phone sat on the passenger seat beside me, buzzing in waves I didn't bother to check. At one point, she stepped out onto the porch and just stood there, arms crossed tight, scanning the street. She wasn't looking for my car. She was looking for me. It was the way her eyes lingered on every pedestrian, every neighbor walking their dog, like she was bracing for me to appear and demand answers. But I wasn't going to give her that scene. Not yet. The longer I stayed out of reach, the more control I had. And control was the one thing she'd assumed I'd never take back. I thought about the man from the video, the way his hand had rested on her like she already belonged to him. I thought about my mother's bizarre, too casual comment under that post, and how the two of them had clearly talked about something behind my back. And with every thought, my resolve sharpened. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie. It was about making her understand that the person she'd written off as passive and predictable could be deliberate and calculating when pushed far enough. The first real crack came around 3 in the afternoon. She stormed out of the house, keys in hand, and sped off in the car. I waited a few minutes before walking up the driveway and letting myself in with my own set of keys. Inside, the energy felt different, frantic, almost chaotic. I noticed her laptop still open on the dining table, a half-written email on the screen with the words, "We can't be seen together for a while." I didn't take a picture. I didn't need to. Just seeing it was enough to confirm what I already knew. The one fling wasn't some hypothetical boundary test. It was real, it had happened, and it wasn't even with a stranger. Before leaving, I made a few more surgical moves. I took the wedding binder she'd spent months obsessing over and slipped it into the trunk of my car. I pulled the backup drive from the desk, the one with all our shared photos, and replaced it with an empty case. I even swapped the SIM card in our shared tablet so she wouldn't have access to the cloud accounts. Small changes, but strategic. Every missing piece would be another shadow in her mind. When I left, I locked the door behind me and drove in the opposite direction from where I thought she might have gone. I didn't need to follow her. I wanted her to come home to more questions than answers, and to sit alone with the creeping realization that the ground under her feet was no longer solid. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the houses gold, my phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail. I didn't press play right away. I just stared at the notification, knowing that whatever she'd said, it would be the sound of someone beginning to lose the certainty they once wore like armor. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one drowning in doubt. I finally played the voicemail after letting it sit there for over an hour. Her voice came through shaky, nothing like the cool, confident tone she'd used when telling me one fling was no big deal. She started with my name, drawn out like she thought softening it would pull me back. Then came the pleading. She wanted to clear the air, to explain everything, but she didn't sound sure of her own words. Halfway through, there was a long pause, and when she spoke again, the facade cracked. Her voice dipped, quieter, almost trembling as she asked if I was with someone else. That question lingered at the end like she didn't even realize she'd said it aloud. I replayed it 3 times, not because I needed to hear it again, but because I wanted to feel every nuance of her unraveling. I wanted her wondering if I was out there giving someone else the attention she'd so easily given away. And maybe, in a way, I wanted her to feel that same gnawing pit in her stomach I'd felt when I saw her in that video. That evening, I went back to the house, not to talk to her, but to set the next stage. I knew she was out again because the driveway was empty. Inside, the air smelled faintly of the perfume she always overused before going somewhere she wanted to be noticed. I walked straight to the bedroom, opened her top drawer and found the wedding ring box. I didn't take the ring. Instead, I removed it, left the box open and empty on the bed, and put the ring in the pocket of my coat. I wanted her to come home and see the absence, to feel the cold spike of panic before she even had the chance to ask where it was. Before I left, I also found the guest list for the wedding sitting on her vanity. I scanned it quickly, my eyes catching on one name I recognized, the same last name as the man in the video. I didn't linger on it. I just folded the list neatly and took it with me. She could explain later why someone she was leaning into at a bar was apparently important enough to get an invitation to our wedding. I drove to a quiet spot by the lake, a place we'd gone together only once, and parked where the glow of the dashboard lit my face just enough for me to see the flood of new messages coming in. They weren't just from her now. Mutual friends were texting too, asking if I was okay, saying she was worried sick. I didn't answer any of them. I wanted the silence to spread, to make her feel like I was slipping further away with every minute she couldn't reach me. As night fell, I imagined her walking into the bedroom, seeing the open ring box, realizing her binder was gone, her backup files missing, the guest list vanished, each little piece of her perfect plan unraveling. And I knew she'd be sitting there, phone in hand, wondering if she'd just lost something she couldn't manipulate her way back into. I didn't know exactly when she'd break, but I knew I was getting close. By the following morning, she wasn't just calling. She was hunting. I woke up to find more than 50 missed calls and a trail of messages that went from pleading to angry to panicked. Then came the one that told me I'd finally gotten under her skin. "If you don't talk to me, I'll go to your mother." It was a threat disguised as a warning, and it confirmed exactly what I'd suspected. Whatever this man in the suit meant to her, my mother wasn't just a bystander. She was tied to this in a way I didn't fully understand yet. That afternoon, instead of keeping my distance like before, I decided to watch her make her next move. I parked 2 streets over from my mother's house and waited. Sure enough, about an hour later, Delilah's car pulled up. She didn't even hesitate before walking up the path, knocking once, and letting herself in like she belonged there. The sight of it made my jaw clench. I sat low in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, resisting the urge to storm in. This wasn't about confrontation yet. This was about learning. 30 minutes passed before the front door opened again. My mother stepped out first, her face tight, eyes scanning the street like she knew someone might be watching. Delilah followed, and the two of them stood on the porch for a moment. My mother touched her arm and said something I couldn't hear, but whatever it was made Delilah smile in this strange, satisfied way. Not the nervous, rattled version I'd seen yesterday. It was a smile that made my stomach knot. Then they hugged, and Delilah left, getting into her car with a confidence she hadn't had when she arrived. I followed at a distance as she drove straight to the same hotel I'd seen her location ping to before. This time, I didn't stop at the street corner. I parked close enough to see her through the lobby windows. She walked in, headed directly to a man sitting at the far end of the bar. The same man. Same suit, different tie. She leaned in, kissed his cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world, and they began talking like they had no reason to hide. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I stayed put. I needed more than just anger. I needed certainty, the kind you can't argue away. So I took out my phone and began filming, not just the two of them together, but the way she touched his hand when she laughed, the way he slid something small, maybe a key card, across the bar toward her, and the way she pocketed it without hesitation. 5 minutes later, they walked toward the elevators. I didn't need to see what happened next to know. I drove off, the footage sitting in my phone like a live wire. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt hollow. This wasn't a theory anymore. This wasn't about a cryptic note or a questionable conversation. This was real, and she had the audacity to act like she could do it in plain sight. By the time I got back to my place, I'd made a decision. I wasn't just going to let her squirm in silence anymore. I was going to start pulling her world apart piece by piece, until she realized the man she thought would never push back had been 3 steps ahead all along. And the first step was going to be personal. Very personal. I knew the next move had to hit her somewhere she thought she was untouchable, her image. Delilah cared more about appearances than anything else. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple. The upcoming wedding, the curated photos on social media, the carefully crafted narrative of 2 people building a life together. She clung to that story like it was her armor. If I could chip away at it, even subtly, she'd start losing control in a way she couldn't hide. The footage from the hotel sat on my phone, but instead of blasting it online or sending it to family, which would be too obvious and too final, I decided to plant seeds. I chose 5 people she considered important. Her maid of honor, her favorite cousin, 2 co-workers, and a longtime friend. To each one, I sent a short, cryptic message. Thought you should see this before the wedding. No explanation. Just the video. I knew it wouldn't stay contained. By the time she found out, the whispers would already be moving faster than she could catch them. 2 days later, I got the first sign it had worked. I was sitting in a cafe across town when my phone lit up with a message from one of those coworkers. "She's losing it. Says people are making things up about her. What's going on?" I didn't reply. The less I said, the more space I left for her own paranoia to do the work. That evening, I positioned myself where I knew she'd have to see me. The local grocery store. I was leaning against the produce display when she walked in, clearly not expecting me. Her eyes locked on mine for a split second before darting away, but the flush in her cheeks gave her away. She walked over slowly, trying to compose herself. "Harris, we need to talk. This has gone too far." she said, her voice tight but still clinging to some idea of control. I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at her, letting the silence drag long enough to make her shift her weight, adjust her bag, glance around at the shoppers like they might overhear. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, calm, almost too calm. Too far? This is just the beginning. Her lips parted like she was about to fire back. But then she froze. She knew that tone. She'd heard it once before, years ago, when I'd found out a friend had been lying to me. Back then, it ended quietly but decisively. Now, she seemed to realize she had no idea where this was going, and that scared her more than anything. I picked up a bag of apples and walked past her without another word, leaving her standing in the middle of the aisle with a mix of anger and confusion etched on her face. I could almost feel the questions piling up in her head. How much did I know? Who else knew? How much time did she have before the whole story collapsed? By the time I left the store, I'd already planned the final step, the one that would force her to face everything, in public with nowhere to hide. I wanted her to feel the floor drop out in front of an audience, and I knew exactly when and where it would happen. The audience I'd been waiting for came sooner than expected. It was at the engagement dinner Delilah's family had arranged, a formal event meant to show everyone how perfectly in love we were. I knew she'd never cancel it, no matter how chaotic things had become. Her pride wouldn't allow it. The restaurant was warm and buzzing with chatter when I walked in. She was already seated at the long table, dressed to impress, flashing that well-practiced smile she used to disarm people. As soon as she saw me, there was a flicker of surprise, quickly smoothed over with a greeting that sounded a little too bright. Everyone assumed we'd just had a normal couple spat. Halfway through dinner, after the polite toasts and the carefully chosen compliments, I stood up. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I pulled my phone from my pocket, but instead of playing the hotel footage for the entire table, I simply looked at her and said, "Delilah, I hope you've enjoyed telling our story your way, because from here on, I'm taking over the ending." I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I placed the ring, the same one I'd taken from its box, gently on the table in front of her. Then I smiled, wished her family a pleasant evening, and walked out. No drama, no spectacle. Just a clear, final message. I was done. The next morning, I woke up in my own apartment, a place I'd quietly signed a lease for during those days of silence. My things were arranged the way I wanted, my clothes hanging neatly in the closet, my life suddenly lighter without the constant weight of her expectations. My phone buzzed a few times, but this time it wasn't panic-inducing. It was messages from friends saying they'd heard what happened, that I'd handled it with more dignity than most could have managed. And for the first time in weeks, I believed them. I wasn't the same passive, unsure person she'd counted on never pushing back. I'd walked away on my terms, and I hadn't lost myself in the process. So yeah, in the end, she got her one fling before the wedding, and I got something better. My freedom, my self-respect, and a life that wasn't built on pretending. That's the story. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone think they were untouchable, only to watch their own choices catch up to them? Share the most unforgettable moment you've witnessed in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts. And don't forget, you've been watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories get told without the sugarcoating.